wish we were funnier. Do you know how we can be funny sometimes and not? I mean, It's like it's early in the morning and I don't know.
You thought it was okay funny?
I like this.
What's
happening here?
Yeah, I wish we were funnier. We are funny.
I think I'm funny.
You don't think I'm funny?
Oh, no, you're funny. You're funny.
Welcome to So Let's Talk Columbus with Michael Wilkos. I'm Lisa Courtice, President and CEO of United Way of Central Ohio, and your host for this very first episode. I'm so excited to introduce you to someone many of you already know. And if you don't know yet, you soon will. Michael Wilkos has been called Columbus's biggest fan, and that's no exaggeration. He spent his career studying our city, celebrating its people, its neighborhoods, and its incredible potential. He knows where Columbus has been and has a pretty good sense of where it's going next. Today, we'll get to know Michael a little better, how his love affair with Columbus began, what makes this city tick, and why he's launching this new podcast. And since he and I have known each other for a very long time, I promise this conversation will be part storytelling, part laughter, and hopefully all Columbus pride. So Michael, our Vice President of Community Engagement, let's talk Columbus. Michael, you've been called Columbus's biggest fan. I do believe it was Columbus Monthly Magazine that stated that. When did that love affair with our city begin?
So I grew up as a kid in Youngstown and just loved studying cities. I thought I was going to be a geographer. I think if I could have picked any job when I was a little kid, it would be a reporter for National Geographic. I wanted to travel the world and interview people and learn about their communities. But growing up in Youngstown, that had a very difficult economic situation, and I was just becoming of age. In the fall of 1977, I was 10 years old, and this fateful day of Black Monday hit the mills, and 5,000 people lost their jobs in Youngstown on that day. There was a series of mill closures that followed in sequence, and within a very short period of time, about 40,000 industrial jobs were lost in the Youngstown area. Unemployment skyrocketed to 23% in Mahoning County. There was no longer money that was flowing into the community coffers, so the police department went on strike, the fire department was on strike, we had a really long school strike, and nothing was working. And as a kid who loved cities, I was worried about what I was seeing. I remember as a kid going to Market Street, which is Youngstown, Boardman, where the suburb I grew up, it's their version of High Street. And because there was no police department, people just set up their lawn chairs and we would watch drag races on the main drag at night. And I was like, something's not normal about this. And then as a kid, I guess I was a nerdy kid. I loved to read the almanac as just little snippets of information. I got the Ohio Almanac when I was 13. It was the 1980 Ohio Almanac. And as I was looking through the Ohio cities, every single city in the state, including mine, was under significant decline. And there was just this one place that was prospering and growing, and it was Columbus. And I just started to develop this really interesting curiosity about why would there be just one city in my entire state that's growing, and why is its future look so different than that of my own? So I just started learning about Columbus. I got a subscription to Columbus Monthly when I was in high school. I used to get the Columbus Dispatch would get delivered on Tuesdays. The Sunday Dispatch would get delivered on Tuesday, and I would ride my bicycle before I had a driver's license up to the corner store to buy the Columbus Dispatch. And I was even keeping track of Franklin County and Columbus building permit data on an IBM Selectric typewriter as I was charting out the city's growth patterns as a teenager. And then when a large industrial supplier went out of business called Ween United, my dad bought for next to nothing this giant drafting table. This was this big metal heavy table that had this probably 6 foot by 4 foot drawing table on the top. And he bought me markers and a whole bunch of papers. And the summer of my 16th birthday, I redeveloped Don Scott Airport for a new urban development connected to downtown Columbus by passenger rail service.
Okay, this isn't normal.
No, it's not normal.
What were people, do you think, saying behind your back?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I also used to have this map of the United States, and on the bottom it had the 100 largest U.S. cities, and I would memorize the populations of the cities. And when relatives would come over for family dinners, I would make them quiz me on the population of American cities. I also used to cut out news articles about weather disasters and other tragic events, and I had them in a green hefty bag. I would pull them out at family meetings and say, look at this terrible snowstorm that hit Boston, and they weren't ready for it.
And I was trying to hide that I was drinking beer from my parents.
Oh, yeah, no, I didn't have to worry about that. I was asking for Christmas gifts for census data. Was what I was looking for when I was a kid.
So I know this, it's not a secret necessarily, but your senior year, for your spring break, you thought it would be a great idea to plan a spring break trip. Now, I planned a spring break trip too when I was in high school to Fort Lauderdale. I understand you took out an ad out in your school newspaper to invite people to join you for a week in Columbus for your spring break.
Well, not quite, but yes, this is a true story. I was so convinced that Columbus was a place of opportunity and that my community was not, that I proposed writing an article in the high school newspaper encouraging everybody to move to Columbus when they finished high school because that's where they were going to find opportunity. The instructor of the newspaper didn't think there was much need for an article like that in the school paper. And so, undeterred, I took an ad out advertising Columbus, and it was terrible. It was these little rub-offs that you would have to use these rubbing devices to get the letters to transfer onto paper so it was ready for print. And the title of the ad was Discover Columbus and Capture the Spirit. And then for that spring, I wanted to convince people that this is where they should move. So there were 8 people who took me up on the offer, and we came down for just the weekend. And there was only one of us that was 18. And at that point, they could get the hotel room. And so we stayed at the Doubletree Hotel in downtown Columbus, and I had planned out a whole day and a half worth of sites that I wanted everybody to see, even though I'd only ever been here one time before.
Wow. What was the highlight of that weekend?
I think it was that we all, keep in mind, we're 17. And we all brought down dress clothes, and we'd saved up our money, and we went to dinner at One Nation.
And
that was just
many
One
of our
Nation,
listeners might not even know what One Nation.
One Nation was a international cuisine restaurant that was on the 40th floor of the Nationwide Tower, so it was called One Nation. And there was an era back in the 80s that lasted into the early 90s where you had restaurants on top of buildings. So like the Vern Rife Tower had a restaurant called Christopher's, which had views of the city, and those were very popular back then. So we have them now again with Fire at the Hilton, which gives us that same experience of dining up in the sky.
Did it spin around?
It did not spin around, no. There are places that do that, but One Nation was static.
You don't happen to remember how much that dinner cost?
I do not remember, but I know that we dressed up and the women wore dresses and the guys wore sports coats and ties, and we were 17 and wanted a fancy dinner. We wanted to be all grown up.
Now, do any of those 8 people, in addition to you, live here now?
Actually, 4 of them moved here. Only 2 are still here. So I guess you can call that a successful trip.
So when did you become a permanent resident?
So I moved here in 1988. I first actually started at Youngstown State University studying geography. And in my 3rd year at Youngstown State, I kind of panicked and thought, oh, I'm going to graduate with a degree in geography from Youngstown State, but what I really want to do is be in Columbus, and I don't have any connections in Columbus, and how will I move to Columbus and get a job with this degree from Youngstown State? And so I just decided to, on a weekend in July, before the school year would start is to make the decision to move down to Columbus. I had friends that were going to Ohio State, and so I did it. And it took me a little longer to finish my undergraduate degree in geography from Ohio State because I lost, at that time, it was difficult to transfer credits. Then finished my undergrad in geography and got a Master of City and Regional Planning. And anytime I had a class in geography or city planning, I would write that lens or topic through what was happening in Columbus. So if it was a city and regional planning law class, I would look at a case that was in Columbus. If it was a land use class, I would only use Columbus as my template. And so I just started using the city as a way to educate myself and really develop the skills to understand the city the way that I have.
And what was one of your first memories when you came here to finish your degree?
Well, I have to say, I was not as interested in life on the OSU campus as I was in other parts of the city. So as an undergrad, I actually lived at Bryden and 18th on the Near East Side because I wanted to have a different kind of neighborhood experience. And within the year of me moving here, City Center Mall opened, and I got to go to City Center on opening day because I had an internship at what was called at the time and is continued to be called to this day a new organization, Downtown Columbus Incorporated. And so what happened there was I knew I wanted to work in development. I knew I wanted to make the city a better place. And I walked into this nonprofit downtown development agency and I said, I want to work here. And they said, well, we're not really hiring right now. And I said, well, you don't understand. I want to work here and you don't need to pay me to work here. You just need to find me a desk. So which one of these desks can I work at? And they said, sure. And then before you knew it, they were paying me for 8 hours a week. And then it was 20 hours a week. And then it was 30 hours a week. And I got to go to graduate school essentially for free and study urban planning because I had secured my own internship doing urban planning at that time. And so just the fact that I was a 21-year-old and able to go to these spectacular events like the opening of a 3-level downtown shopping mall, it made me feel like I was in the big city.
Yeah. What do you remember about what were your first impressions of City Center?
Oh, I mean, it was spectacularly modern and clean, and it had those chrome railings and glass, and it was all white. It felt very sleek and futuristic. And, the third floor of City Center had stores that I had never heard of. And it felt like Columbus was really on the rise. And I felt that I had arrived in my own personal development. I felt like I had arrived in the big city and I was making it because I got to work in an organization that brought me close to these events.
Kind of like Mary Tyler Moore.
A little bit, yeah.
Well, that was an important time for United Way because the night before City Center opened, our donors were invited to get a preview of City Center, but that was a big invitation to receive. And in terms of changing philanthropy in our community, every guest was asked to give $5,000 to United Way.
It was a lot.
That was a big ticket. Yeah, that was a big ticket price. And they had Mel Torme as the entertainer that night.
Well, I didn't get to go to that event, but I did go to the event with Up for People.
Right.
that was the next day. I do remember there was a 2-page ad for the opening of City Center, and it's kind of laughable now. And all the ad said was London, period, Paris, period, Milan, period, Columbus. As if somehow the opening of City Center Mall was putting Columbus on the same fashion capital standards as those cities. I probably have that advertisement in my basement. In fact, I know that I have the original grand opening day program from City Center that has a list of every store that was in it on opening day. I know I have that in a box in my basement.
So if Columbus had a dating profile, how would you describe it?
Oh, that's really an interesting question. I find, okay, I have to answer this in 2 ways. I find Columbus special because it is a growing, prosperous, forward-looking city in a region of the country where that simply is not the case for most cities. Columbus is come into its own over the last 30 years. But it doesn't know itself, in my opinion. I kind of feel that Columbus is an awkward teenager that's kind of stumbling in its identity. Some days it has a strong sense of purpose of who it is, and other days it is still trying to figure that out. I think that people who live here are optimistic for the city. They look forward to the future, and there's a belief that Columbus has its better days. But at the end of the day, we're an average, middle-class American city. We're slow and steady. So, the dating profile for Columbus is not going to be pizzazz and style, right? We're not the beach, we're not the mountains, but we're a really great place to live, and the quality of life here is great for a lot of people. But I think what Columbus's most attractive quality, and that would be part of its dating profile, is it has yet to become its better self. And that's what I think is really optimistic about the city, is that it's still trying and striving for perfection, to be a better city, to be more inclusive, to be a diverse city where people's voices are welcome. I just think that as a person who's loved cities and has studied social systems, ever since people started to live in cities, there's been push factors and pull factors. People move away from places that are war, famine, persecution, lack of inclusion, and they move toward places that are open, that have opportunity, that is both economic opportunity and educational opportunity, and people feel welcome. And that very much has been Columbus's story for decades to come, or for many decades now. What I'm most concerned about is what's happened at the national level, and it's kind of changing the conversation, and it's no longer as pleasant as it once was. And while we haven't really seen a lot of that anger come to Columbus, I worry that might happen someday.
Well, one of the things that you remind me and our colleagues is that many of the cities in this industrial state, right, they're legacy cities. They've experienced like their peak of all the things. And you remind us that we haven't reached our peak yet. Our future is ahead of us. So say more about that. So we don't see the decline that some of those that were dependent on different industries that are now have disappeared, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think that because I grew up in Youngstown, and even though I left there in 1988, I've been going back for a long time, and I do spend time going to other parts of the state. I feel that in many cities in Ohio, they're a bit more honest about their challenges, because the challenges are much more glaring in the face because of the loss of whole industries that have changed the economic outlook of that. But I also think that there's an incredible amount of pride in those places. So when you go to a place like Cleveland, I mean, even in Columbus, I see more people wearing Cleveland attire than I see Columbus attire. Because, of course, the greatest mobility patterns of people moving to Columbus actually come from Cleveland. But because it feels that so many people in Columbus are from other parts of Ohio, they still have their heart and their mind back in their hometown. And Columbus is just a place where they live. And so when I talk to people about the history of our city, they just don't even think about it. And they don't think about the difficulties the city faces. I think some of that is because the city has grown so significantly territorially. And so a lot of new high growth, upper middle class neighborhoods fall within the city of Columbus's profile. So for many decades, it's kind of masked the difficulties that we have in our inner city neighborhoods, that we very much have a culture that we are a can-do city, that the better days are ahead of us. There is a culture that you talk about the optimism of tomorrow, not the difficulty or the pain of the past. Right. That is a very important psychological place for our community to be in, but I also feel that it is disconnected from some of its challenges. It's not always honest about those challenges. And it's disconnected a bit from its history. And so I'd like to see people in Columbus know a bit more about the history of the city. And I think that they would then have more pride for it, and you might see more people wearing pro-Columbus attire as you walk around the city.
What's your favorite T-shirt that you have that is about Columbus?
I have a T-shirt that says "Warning." I may start talking about Columbus that someone got me as a gift, and I can't believe that shirt was actually made. They actually found it. They didn't have it made
For you, right?
But then, I have another one that another T-shirt that says "Sidewalks are social justice," and it just is a way to remind me that sometimes social justice can be little things like transportation equity and making sure people have the ability to get around in multiple ways, and to constantly be looking at the city for its nuances.
With all the growth that we're experiencing and that's projected and all the challenges we have, what excites you the most?
The single project that excites me the most right now, well, there's really two, and that would be when the voters approved an $8 billion transportation levy for Link Us in 2024. One of my very first jobs when I was still in college was running the Capital City Transit Coalition, and I worked in the basement of a funeral house in Victorian Village, a former funeral house, and was trying to drum up public support for a light rail levy in Columbus.
Okay.
And so there was a lot of people who were excited about light rail, and then when COTA decided to go with a bus-only option, all of our support dried up, and I found myself without a job and was looking to go to Santiago, Chile in the Peace Corps to just kind of get away. A longtime friend by the name of Cleve Ricksecker convinced me that why would I have to go to another country to do my Peace Corps work when there's Peace Corps work to do right here in my hometown. And so he convinced me to stay.
We're glad he did that.
Yeah. So in addition to the passage of Link Us, which is about bus rapid transit and sidewalks and bike lanes and bike trails, I am most excited about the zoning reform that's going on with Columbus City, which is really upzoning housing, which I think is the number one critical issue that's facing our city is the lack of affordable housing. So transportation and housing, I'm excited about both of those.
Is there a moment or story that for you captures the spirit of Columbus?
I forget the year it was, but there was a group that wanted to find out what city was the most honest. So they went to a collection of cities and they had 50 wallets and they dropped the wallets on the ground.
Oh.
And each wallet had $50 in it and the same ID. And they wanted to see in what American city was going to get the largest number of wallets returned and mailed into the address.
Oh, no, wait a minute. When was this?
Oh, this was probably in the 90s.
Okay.
And Columbus had the number one number of wallets that came back that still had the $50 in it. And I thought, well, there you go. And the other one was back in the day at the North Market, there was a woman by the name of Betty Gatterdam, and it was Gatterdam eggs, and all she sold were eggs. Betty was old, and sometimes she couldn't make it into work. But the business needed to go on. So someone who was affiliated with the egg stand would just put a bucket of money that had bills and coins right out on the top of the counter. And it was a self-serve store at the North Market where you took the eggs that you wanted, you made the change, and you left your money. I had a group of people from New York City that were visiting Columbus, and they saw the bucket of money, and they were like, what is that? And I said, oh, that's just a self-service store. Betty must not be able to be here today.
And they're like, what?
And they were like, I've never seen such a thing. And so for me, these endearing stories were that, and you look at it now with the fact that the homicide rate in the city is the lowest it's been in many, many decades. I've always felt Columbus was a safe, kind, city where people looked out for one another and helped each other. And I know lots of people who don't lock their doors because they just feel safe where they live. And so I think a lot of these images that we get of life in big cities is just not accurately described. And so that's my favorite Columbus story of those two.
You have had many day jobs. All your day jobs have been about promoting the city and improving the city. How do you see United Way's role and your current leadership role shaping Columbus's future?
we've been around for over 100 years, and that stands for
Yeah.
something. So I think at the backbone, we are an organization that knows the community, and that I've just never had a better experience to be a connector, that I can be in a homeless shelter one day and having conversations with people in which the city's prosperity is not serving them. And then moments later, I could be meeting with a corporate executive that's kind of working on a new strategy to achieve social change in Columbus. And I just don't think there's very many people that get to be in those two extremes, sometimes within hours of one another. And so for me, United Way is a connector and a convener and understands the history and the needs of this community. And that's why I feel so perfectly aligned and proud of the work that we do every day.
So you're in high demand as a speaker. Like, how frequently do these requests come in?
Oh, it depends. I could do 4 or 5 presentations in a week, and then sometimes I can go a week or 2 without one. But the variety and diversity of places in which I get to speak, again, also run from a group of faith leaders who are trying to understand the needs of the communities that they serve, to religious and fraternal organizations, to right into the boardrooms of some of the largest companies in town.
Yep.
So again, the ability to both be communicating down to the grassroots and advocates level about, here's why these systems are working the way they are. This is why evictions look the way they are and what's happening across the community, connected to larger systemic housing issues. And then the ability to be able to, because of the United Way brand, to be able to go into the corporate boardrooms and be able to share that community knowledge, I think is really powerful, because when we are informed, we just make better decisions.
And I know that you mentioned just in the next week or so, you are the keynote at the Kiwanis Club.
Yes, Kiwanis, never miss a Kiwanis.
A legacy organization. But you're also speaking to the Grange Insurance leadership team, and you're also speaking to associates at Bath and Body Works.
Yep. And, did a community shelter board talking about homelessness, did a pastors group around New American population. There is a real thirst for understanding how our community is changing. And I like for United Way to be able to serve in that role to explain to the community the challenges and the opportunities that lay before us.
Do you ever get tired of talking?
Sometimes I get tired of listening to myself. Yeah.
And what do you do about that?
I just keep going because I can't stop. Been doing it for, since I was at least 13. So,
So which, if you had to think of an
5 decades.
audience that responded to you, like, do you have an audience that you think, I can't believe I just got that response? Good or bad?
Oh, I think when I speak to neighborhood groups, you get some of the best response, because the light bulb often turns on.
What's an example?
I think a lot of times neighborhoods think that what's happening in their microgeography is unique to their microgeography. And then when you explain the mobility patterns that show, wealth and prosperity is moving back into inner city neighborhoods, and poverty and economic vulnerability is on the move, and what directions in which that's moving, and the age demographics and the cultural changing landscape. What I find most surprising is neighborhood groups, they're not studying the citywide demographics. And so when you're able to go in there and say, all of the net population growth of our city and county is now due to diverse populations, then they understand that what's happening in their neighborhood is not unique to that neighborhood, and they have a broader understanding, and that's where I find my greatest joy. And
is there one, now you've worked at United Way 2 times.
Yes.
What was your first role?
In neighborhoods.
Right. And now leading community engagement. Is there one impact area or project you've worked on that was most meaningful to you?
I certainly value so much the work of neighborhood volunteers, and the ability to provide the skills and tools for people to give their gift in the way in which they want to give them. So I think some of the grassroots work that we have done over the years has been stuff that I look back so fondly for. What I mean by that is there's a difference between an opinion and what people care about. And I think that too often mainstream organizations, we go into marginalized communities and we'll ask people their opinion. And everybody has an opinion about everything, but that doesn't mean that's what you care about. What you care about is a much, much shorter list. And so if you can go into a community and really get to the core of what people care about, and you organize around what they care about, it might be a different list than what you expected. It might be a shorter list than what you wanted, but that's where work is going to get done. Mm-hmm. And so for me, it's about going into a marginalized community, whatever that might be, and trying to really kind of listen and understand what those needs are, and using the strength of United Way to be a connector for those individuals.
Your parents must have been very proud of you, talking to the C-suite and also the grassroots level. No, really. All right, so I'm dating myself. Let's make a deal.
Yeah.
Because you do so much organizing, your car is a thing, all of it on its own. It's just a thing. And let's make a deal, they'd say, do you have a thimble? And the woman would be like, oh, yes, I do have a thimble, right? And I don't know what you got to do after that, but I think you got to do something like pick the door to open. Yeah. So if I were to go into your car right now with my eyes shut and reach for something, what might I pull out?
Oh, well, in addition to a lot of empty fast food bags and mostly empty coffee cups sitting on the floor, you're still going to find garden tools in the back seat of my car. And every time I get in them, I look at the back seat and I think, well, garden season's not that far off, so I might as well just leave them where they are.
Yeah, but what our listener needs to know is you stop randomly and do gardening on street corners.
Yes, I'm prone to, I do like to do guerrilla gardening. And so it's not uncommon. Yeah, it's not uncommon that I will stop and take care of the bushes in a public park because they're a little untidy.
Thank you for that. You can come to my house.
Great, anytime.
All right, now I have some rapid fire questions for you.
Great.
One word. What's your one word to describe you? That's very accurate.
Quirky.
Morning person or night owl?
Night owl.
Christmas or Halloween?
Halloween.
A belief you've changed your mind about?
I used to think when I was a kid, you could never oppose the beliefs of the federal government. And now I do.
Something that people would be surprised to learn about you.
I had a really bad stuttering problem as a kid.
Oh, until what age?
Well into elementary, like third grade.
Wow. What's your favorite book?
Death and Life of Great American Cities, Jane Jacobs.
How many times have you read it?
Oh, in bits and pieces. Never from cover to cover.
Favorite movie?
One True Thing.
Favorite building in Columbus?
Levesque Tower, of course.
Favorite mayor?
Coleman.
If listeners take just one action this week, what should it be?
Read the Dispatch every day.
I do. Michael, thank you for kicking off this podcast in such a fun and insightful way. I think our listeners can already tell how passionate you are about this city, although many of them already know that, and why you're the perfect person to lead these conversations. And to everyone listening, thank you for joining us. We hope you'll subscribe and follow So Let's Talk Columbus, wherever you get your podcasts. In the next episode, Michael will be discussing the changing demographics and cultural identity of Columbus. Until next time, remember that there's not a problem Columbus can't fix or Michael can't describe.